Hi, I'm Dr. David Purves. If you follow my films or my blog, drpurves.com, then you'll know that I spend a lot of my time working one-to-one with clients using CBT and other psychological processes. And I really value client time for lots of reasons. People are lovely, they have really interesting stories, and I like to be able to help people. But they also they offer insight. People have tremendous insights into themselves, and sometimes just they throw them out there just as if it's just a throwaway comment. I go, whoa, that's profound. Where did that come from? And I'd like to share with you 3 insights that clients have shared with me over the years. The first one I thought was nice. Sometimes people say something, and it just rolls off the tongue, but I go, that really sums up the situation. A lady once said to me, "Catastrophe is a journey I go on every day." And I thought, wow, catastrophe is a journey I go on every day. And I wanted to change it. I wanted to say catastrophe is a destination and I go there and back every day, but it's the same basic thing. What does it mean? Catastrophe is a journey I go there every day. Well, it means that every day she puts some amount of her day into imagining the worst possible scenario, the worst possible outcome, some catastrophe. She goes there and she imagines this catastrophe, but then she comes back because it doesn't happen. And that's a really kind of profound characterization of severe anxiety, because in severe anxiety, of course, you're living in catastrophe. You're expecting the worst possible outcome. Your body, of course, is preparing you for the worst possible outcome, which is what gives you the physical symptoms of anxiety. Your mind is trying to kind of work out what all the possible scenarios are, what all the possible options are. Well, that'll be worry, right? Trying to figure out what's going to happen so you can be prepared for it. So I thought that was a really just throwaway comment in a sense. Catastrophe, well, I go there and back every day, but it's such a worthwhile thing to remember, and I'll tell you why towards the end of the film. The second one was I'm talking with a client about the difference between feelings and facts. So I'm saying, which is one of the things that I would normally say, well, just because you feel something doesn't make it true. Your feeling does not necessarily, your emotion does not necessarily capture the essence of reality. She says, whoa, hang on a minute. She says, reality is just an option. I spend a lot of my time in fantasy. Reality is just another option. I spend a lot of my time in fantasy. I thought, wow, that's great. Because actually, that is exactly what the problem is. Reality is an option. Well, reality isn't an option. We'll flip it over. Fantasy is the option. Reality is basically what we've got. And, we can argue about the validity of that, but reality is basically what we've got. Fantasy is the option. Now, I said to her, well, okay. I mean, do you want to spend all of your time in fantasy? Is it a good place to be? She said, no. She said, I hate it. It's horrible. It's not like she's dreaming about being on a gorgeous resort island, and having everything she wants. She's not happy. She's not having the relationship she wants. She's not having the work experience she wants. Her fantasy is kind of dark and very negative, full of fear and regret and things going wrong. I say, okay, well, fantasy then, spending a lot of your time in fantasy is not something which is useful to you. She agreed. So then we need to make fantasy an option, not reality. We want to focus on reality and make fantasy something which is an option. And I'll tell you how to do that in a minute. The third one, and you might recognize this, when you're stressed, your shoulders get tight, your neck gets tight, and it feels like there's a pressure on your head. Some people describe it as like a steel band around the head. So a client said to me, it feels like my head's in a vice. And I thought, well, that's such a common way to describe like stress, it's pressure in the head. Anyway, I thought about it and I turned it into an animation, an animated cartoon. See what you think of this. So I said to this client, well, okay, you've got a lot of stress, you've got a lot of pressure. Where does the pressure come from? And she said, well, I put pressure on myself. Okay, so you're putting the pressure on yourself. It's not necessarily coming from the external world. You're putting pressure on yourself. She says, yes. So, catastrophe I go there every day. Reality versus fantasy as being an option. You could spend time in one or the other, and put pressure on yourself. Those three elements, those three things, those three insights nicely capture a huge amount of the source of anxiety, stress, and even depression. Now, normally, and when my clients were talking about them, they're just kind of throwing out this comment, and I go, wow, that sounds so profound. They're doing these things automatically. They're not thinking about them. And that is our way into changing them. If you go to catastrophe every day, and you know you're going to catastrophe every day, all of a sudden you have the option of not going. You have the ability, the beginning of a choice, just the beginning of some choice not to go to catastrophe. Okay? If you say, well, okay, this is reality, but I spend a lot of my time in fantasy. Okay, well, as soon as you recognize that there are two places you could be, you're starting to create the beginning of a choice. And if you say, well, yeah, I put pressure on myself, nobody else is putting pressure on me. Okay, if you're putting pressure on yourself, then recognizing that fact gives you the beginning of an option of not doing it, of doing something different. And so the solution I'm going to offer for these three kinds of problems, or these three kinds of ideas, is that if we can remember that they are in fact choices. Now, I can hear you saying, I don't choose to be anxious. I don't choose to be stressed. I don't choose to be, feeling really down and miserable and like thinking everything's going to go badly wrong. No, okay, you don't choose it, but they're likely to be habits of thought that take you there automatically. And if we allow that automatic process to continue to be automatic, then of course it's just going to continue to do what it does, because that's the whole nature of automatic processes. If, however, we start to recognize that potentially we have some choice, from this moment forward, we might have some choice in whether we go to catastrophe or not. Maybe today I won't go to catastrophe. Okay. Maybe today I won't indulge a lot of time in fantasies which are really horrible and negative. Maybe today, actually, instead of putting pressure on myself, I'll be kind to myself. I'll just try to be kind to myself a little bit more. Maybe instead of doing everything for everybody, I'll sit down, I'll have a cup of tea or a cup of coffee. Maybe I'll sit down, read a book or a magazine or a paper. Maybe I'll just go for a walk. Maybe I'll do something kind to myself instead of putting pressure on myself. These options, these beginnings of a choice, are the thing which changes your experience. So if today we said, today I'm going to exercise some choice, then tomorrow that choice will be a little bit easier, and the day after a little bit easier again, until we have more options for choice. In a sense, the choice muscle gets stronger. If I had a weak arm and I wanted to strengthen it, what would I do? Well, in principle, I'd pick up a weight and I'd do this all the time, wouldn't I? And the arm would get stronger. And so it is with the choice muscle. The more you exercise choice, the stronger it gets. In the beginning, it feels weak. It's not practiced. But after a little while of exercising this choice, it gets stronger. And then you can say, well, yeah, of course I've got choice. These are the kinds of insights that clients offer all the time, and they're really interesting and useful, and we can turn them into something that everybody can benefit from. So, the final word: catastrophe, fantasy, pressure on yourself. Let's flip that over. Today will be a normal day. I don't have to imagine some terrible thing happening, and you know what? I can go easy on myself. Today is a normal day. I don't have to imagine something terrible happening, and I can go easy on myself. Now, I would think if you to set your watch, your computer, your whatever device you've got, or even just put a post-it on the fridge, and if you to spend 5 seconds every hour just saying to yourself, you know what? Today is a normal day. I don't need to imagine terrible things happening, and I can go easy on myself. You know, if you do that 8 times a day, takes 5 8 to 40, that's 40 seconds. 40 seconds out of your day is nothing, and if you do it for a couple of days, a week, all of a sudden you're starting to remember that actually today's a normal day. It doesn't have to be a catastrophe. I have the option. I can inhabit a hugely negative fantasy, or actually I can attach myself to reality, and I can actually do something reality based instead of just worrying about fantasy. And I don't always have to put pressure on myself. I can actually do something which is nice and resourceful, and nourishes me instead of depleting me. 5 seconds, 8 times a day, 40 seconds I think. That would give you the beginning of a new habit, the habit of choice. And when you have choice, you have control, and control is a great thing to have. I hope you found this information interesting and useful. Please visit my website, drpurves.com, and sign up for my newsletter if you haven't already done so, and try this exercise. Let me know how you get on. I really want to hear if this has been useful to you. Thanks a lot. Take care.